Now, for anyone out there who loves the beat 'em up genre of video games, you gotta thank Double Dragon for that. Because if it wasn't for Double Dragon, there would be no Streets of Rage. There would be no Final Fight. There would be no X-Men, the arcade game, any of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles beat 'em up style games, and so on and so forth. But also in the 90s, there was this big trend of making live action films based off of popular video games. And Double Dragon was no exception to that rule. But if you ask me, it should have been an exception because just like Super Mario Brothers before in 1993, this movie is pretty much a walk-in abortion. But there's only four reasons as to why I watched this movie or was interested in watching this when it came out, right? Well, for one, it's Double Dragon. It's based on a video game. I'm a nerd. Go figure. Two, it stars one of my favorite movie martial artists in Mark Dacascos, who played in Only the Strong a year before that. Three, it has Alyssa Milano in it. I mean, come on now, it's Alyssa Milano, all right? And four, Robert Patrick playing as the main villain, Koga Shuko, in this film. And keep in mind, this movie came out in 1994, 3 years after Robert Patrick killed it as the T-1000 in Terminator 2 Judgment Day in 1991. But even with all four of these things that I just mentioned, it still couldn't save this film from being as bad as it is. Now, the plot involves a magical medallion that the villain, Koga Shuko, is looking for. And he ends up killing the parents of Billy and Jimmy Lee. When their parents are killed, they're taken in by this woman named Satori. But when she's taken out of the picture, they must do everything in their power to make sure that Shuko doesn't get a hold of this medallion. Now, with a name like Koga Shuko, you're expecting a Japanese guy, but you have Robert Patrick playing as a Japanese-based villain in a movie. Like, okay, I know that wouldn't fly today. Not only that, I understand you have Mark Dacascos in this movie because the character Jimmy Lee in the Double Dragon games is a fictional martial artist. Mark Dacascos is a real-life martial artist. So why did they have Scott Wolf from Party of Five playing as his brother Billy Lee and not another martial artist to play that role? I didn't get that. Alyssa Milano as Miriam in this movie. Well, she wasn't a damsel in distress. Her character was more annoying than anything else. She's more like a resistance fighter or some crap, because I could barely remember what happened in that film. Oh, and also, by the way, Scott Wolf and Alyssa Milano used to date back in the day too, but they actually broke up a year, I guess, before or after this movie came out. But that's neither here nor there. But overall, Double Dragon is an example of, look, if you don't understand the source material, leave it alone. Or otherwise, you're going to be doing what I love to call failing an open book test. You have the source, you have the answers, you have it right there. So how hard was it to make a movie based off of a series of video games that had hardcore beat 'em up action in it? How hard was it to make that into a live action film instead of making it all kid friendly and hee hee ha ha and so slapstick? Because I recall plenty of times I was putting quarters and tokens into those arcade machines, enjoying myself playing these games, right? And granted, I managed to beat a few of them, maybe not all of them, but still, Double Dragon, 1994, is right up there with Street Fighter with Jean-Claude Van Damme as being one of the worst live-action video game-based films ever made. Don't argue with me, go argue with somebody else. Because over here in the Brown Baldy cinematic universe, this movie would have had a much more serious tone to it than that cartoonish slapstick crap that they gave us back in the day. Just my thoughts, just my opinion, and as always, just saying.